A sharp beam of light burned into Lee's eyes. He flinched and lifted his arm, but the light followed him, his back pressed against the cold metal wall of the ship. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure the man above could hear it. A voice spoke. The words were fast and unfamiliar, carrying authority and surprise. Lee understood nothing, but fear filled the space between each sound. He stayed silent. Silence had always kept him alive. The man stepped closer. Heavy boots appeared in the light, followed by the shape of a uniform. Lee waited for shouting. He waited for rough hands. Nothing happened. The flashlight lowered. The man spoke again, slower now, less sharp. Lee swallowed and whispered, "I sleep." The man stared at him, confused rather than angry. After a long moment, he turned and climbed back up the ladder. Fear rushed back into Lee's chest. He searched the dark space, ready to hide again. But the man returned. This time, he placed a small bottle on the floor and gently pushed it toward Lee. "Water." Lee hesitated, then drank slowly, afraid it would be taken away. Each sip felt like life returning to his body. The man watched silently. The ship continued moving. Time blurred. Hunger, fear, and exhaustion mixed together. Lee learned the sound of footsteps above him and the rhythm of the engine. He tried to sleep, but fear kept pulling him awake. Then the engine sound changed. It slowed. The vibration softened. Finally, it stopped. New noises filled the air. Many voices. Metal scraping. Movement everywhere. The hatch opened wide. Daylight poured in. Lee climbed out slowly, squinting. The world outside froze him. This was not Nigeria. The buildings were low and unfamiliar. Signs were covered with strange symbols, bold lines, and shapes he had never seen before. People spoke quickly in a language that sounded sharp and musical at the same time. Lee felt the truth hit him. He was in China. The man stayed close and guided him away from the dock. They walked past dirt roads, open land, and quiet fields. The air smelled of earth and smoke. Rural China. Lee walked silently, afraid to ask questions he couldn't speak. They reached a small village. Children stopped to stare. Adults glanced at him with curiosity and caution. Lee lowered his eyes. The man led him to a simple house near the edge of the village. Inside, the air was warm. The smell of herbs and dried plants filled the room. The man pointed to a stool. Lee sat. The man knelt in front of him and pointed to himself. "Lee." Then he pointed to Lee. Lee softly said his Nigerian name. Lee nodded, accepting it without understanding. Food came soon after. Warm, simple food. Lee ate carefully, afraid it might disappear. His body slowly relaxed as strength returned. That night, Lee slept on the floor, but this time, a small oil lamp burned nearby. Light, safety. He slept deeply. One day passed, then another. Lee fed him, gave him water, and spoke words Lee could not understand. Lee answered with silence in broken English. Language became a wall between them. Lee stayed inside most of the time, not because he was forced, but because fear lived in him. Through the door opening, he watched village life, people working, talking, living calmly. By the third day, hunger grew stronger than fear. When Lee stepped away, Lee quietly opened the door and slipped outside. The sunlight felt too bright. A child saw him and shouted. Heads turned. Voices rose. Lee panicked and tried to retreat, but a strong hand grabbed his arm. It was not Lee. The man spoke sharply. More people gathered. Lee shook his head, unable to explain. Then Lee appeared. He stepped between Lee and the others, calm and firm. His voice cut through the noise without shouting. The villagers argued, but Lee did not move. Slowly, the crowd stepped back. Lee guided Lee inside and closed the door. Inside, Lee cleaned a small scrape on Lee's arm with quiet care, as if teaching him that protection came with rules. Lee thought the danger had passed. Then heavy footsteps approached the house. Different footsteps. Voices called out from outside, stronger, more commanding. Lee's face changed. He raised one finger and said a single English word Lee understood. Stay. Lee opened the door. Men stood outside. Their posture carried authority. Their voices were sharp and demanding. Lee answered calmly. The men stepped closer. One of them looked past Lee and saw Lee. He pointed. The men spoke louder. Lee responded firmly, his body blocking the doorway. The air filled with tension. Lee turned slightly and spoke directly to Lee, using words Lee could not understand. The sentence was longer than before, spoken like a decision. Lee's eyes softened for a brief moment. Then he stepped inside and slowly closed the door. Lee rushed forward as Lee spoke one last sentence in that unfamiliar language. The lock turned, a hard metal sound. Lee pulled the door. It did not open. He pressed his ear to the wood and heard Lee's footsteps moving away. Lee's breathing became shallow. He whispered, "Please." But the room answered with silence. The man speaks words Lee cannot understand and locks the door. If this inspired you, watch the next episode. Stories, like, comment, and subscribe.